My name is Elena Hayes and I'm 32 years old. The house I grew up in sits on 3 acres of land in Willow Creek, a small town outside of Portland, Oregon. It's a beautiful 2-story farmhouse with white paint, a wraparound porch, and an oak tree in the front yard that my grandfather planted 60 years ago. That house was more than just a building to me. It was where Mom taught me to bake bread in the kitchen with the yellow wallpaper. Where Dad and I built a tree house that still stands in the backyard. Where my grandmother lived her final years, rocking on the porch and telling stories about her childhood. Every room held memories. Every corner held love. My parents lived there for 40 years. I grew up there with my older brother Marcus. But Marcus never cared about the house the way I did. He moved to Seattle after college and rarely came back. I was the one who visited every holiday, who helped Mom with the garden, who sat with Dad while he fixed the porch steps. I loved that house. I thought it would always be there. Last March, everything changed. I was living in Denver working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. I'd moved there 5 years earlier for a job opportunity and built a decent life. Small apartment, good friends, steady income. But I always planned to move back to Willow Creek eventually. Back to the house. Back home. One Tuesday afternoon I got a call from Marcus. That was unusual. We talked maybe twice a year, usually around holidays. "Elena, we need to talk," he said. His voice was flat, businesslike. I asked what was wrong. "Mom and Dad are selling the house." I felt my stomach drop. "What? Why?" He sighed. "They're getting older. The house is too big. The maintenance is expensive. They want to move into a smaller place in town." I asked why nobody told me. He said, "We're telling you now. The decision's made. They're listing it next week." I couldn't believe it. They'd made this huge decision without even asking me. Without considering how I felt. I told Marcus I needed to call Mom. He said, "She's busy with the realtor. I'll have her call you later." Then he hung up. Mom called me that night. Her voice was tired. "Elena, honey, I know this is hard. But your father and I can't keep up with the house anymore. It's too much work and we're not getting any younger." I asked why they didn't discuss it with me first. She said, "Because we knew you'd be upset and this isn't about you. It's about us and what we need." That stung. I told her I wanted to buy the house. That I'd been saving money for years with the plan of eventually coming home. She was quiet for a moment. "Honey, you don't have that kind of money. The house is worth over $400,000. We need to sell it to fund our retirement." I told her I could get a loan, find investors, figure something out. He cut me off. "Elena, this decision is final. I'm sorry, but you need to accept it." I felt tears streaming down my face. I begged her to wait, to give me time. She said the listing was going live in 3 days. Then she said she had to go and hung up. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. For the next week I couldn't think about anything else. I called Mom twice more and both times she told me the same thing. The decision was made and I needed to move on. Marcus didn't return my texts. Dad never called me himself, which hurt almost as much as everything else. The house was listed on a Thursday. I saw it online. Beautiful photos of the porch, the kitchen, the oak tree. The description talked about the charming farmhouse with endless potential. It felt like reading an obituary for someone I loved. Over the next month I tried everything I could think of. I talked to banks about loans. I looked into first-time homebuyer programs, even though I wasn't technically a first-time buyer. I reached out to distant relatives, asking if anyone would co-sign. Nothing worked. I didn't have enough saved for a down payment, and my income wasn't high enough to qualify for the mortgage on my own. I felt helpless. Watching the house I loved slip away and being powerless to stop it. In late April Mom called. "We got an offer. Full asking price, cash buyer. We're accepting it." I asked who the buyer was. She said, "Some investment company. They're buying it as a rental property or something." Does it matter? It mattered to me. But I didn't have the energy to argue. I asked when the sale would close. She said 6 weeks. I told her I wanted to come home before then to say goodbye to the house. She said, "Elena, that's going to make this harder for everyone. Maybe it's better if you just remember it the way it was." I couldn't believe she was asking me not to come home. I told her I was coming anyway. She sighed and said, "Fine. Let me know when." We barely spoke after that. I felt angry, betrayed, heartbroken. This was my home too. My childhood. My memories. And they were selling it without a second thought about how I felt. I started looking at flights to Portland. I needed to see the house one last time. To say goodbye properly even if no one else understood why that mattered. 2 weeks later I flew to Portland. I rented a car and drove to Willow Creek. It was late May and everything was green and blooming. The town looked the same as it always had. Small, quiet, familiar. I pulled up to the house and sat in the car for a long time just looking at it. The white paint was chipping in places. The porch sagged slightly on one side. But it was still beautiful. Still home. I walked up the steps and knocked on the door. Mom answered. She looked older than I remembered. More tired. She hugged me briefly and let me in. The inside was half-packed. Boxes everywhere. Furniture covered in sheets. It looked like a house that was dying. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, remembering. The kitchen where we had family dinners. The living room where we decorated the Christmas tree. My old bedroom, now empty except for a single box of my childhood things Mom had saved. I sat on the floor of that room and cried. Mom found me there and sat down beside me. "I'm sorry this is so hard for you," she said quietly. I told her I felt like I was losing a part of myself. She squeezed my hand but didn't say anything else. That night I stayed in a hotel in town. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the house, about the buyer, about the unfairness of it all. The next morning I did something impulsive. I drove to the town hall and asked to see public records of recent property sales. The clerk was helpful. She pulled up the listing for my parents' house. The buyer was listed as Cedar Holdings LLC. I wrote down the name and thanked her. Back in my hotel room I searched for Cedar Holdings online. There was almost nothing. Just a basic business registration in Oregon with no website, no contact information, no details. It was a shell company. Someone was hiding behind it. I didn't know why that bothered me so much, but it did. That night I had dinner with my parents. It was tense. We didn't talk about the house. We talked about work, the weather, Marcus's kids. Surface level things. When I left, Mom hugged me and said, "I hope you can forgive us someday." I didn't respond. I drove back to my hotel feeling emptier than ever. I flew back to Denver the next day. I threw myself into work trying to distract myself. But I couldn't stop thinking about the house. About Cedar Holdings. About who was behind it. In mid-June Mom texted me, "Sale closed today. We're officially out." That was it. No emotion. No acknowledgement of what this meant to me. Just a fact. I didn't reply. A week later I got a strange email. The subject line said, "Regarding 482 Maple Road, Willow Creek." That was my parents' address. I opened it nervously. The email was from a lawyer named Thomas Brennan. It said, "Ms. Hayes, I represent the new owner of the property at 482 Maple Road. My client would like to meet with you to discuss the property. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience." I stared at the email for a long time. Why would the new owner want to meet with me? I called the number listed. A receptionist answered and transferred me to Mr. Brennan. He was polite but vague. "My client prefers to explain in person. Are you available to meet in Willow Creek next week?" Against my better judgment I said yes. I flew back to Portland the following Tuesday. Mr. Brennan had arranged to meet me at a cafe in downtown Willow Creek. I arrived early, nervous and confused. At exactly 2 o'clock, a woman in her 60s walked in. She was well-dressed, professional with kind eyes. She approached my table. "Elena Hayes?" I nodded. She smiled. "I'm Margaret Brennan, Thomas's mother. I'm also the one who bought your family's house." I stared at her. She wasn't a faceless investment company. He was a real person. She sat down across from me. "I'm sure you have questions." I had a million. I started with the most obvious one. "Why did you want to meet me?" She folded her hands on the table. "Because the house means something to you. And I wanted you to know it means something to me too." She explained that she'd grown up in Willow Creek. That she'd always loved that house and had watched it for years, hoping it would one day go on the market. When it did, she bought it immediately. "But I didn't buy it to flip or rent out," she said. "I bought it because I want to restore it. Preserve it. Keep it the way it was meant to be." I didn't know what to say. Margaret continued, "I know this doesn't change the fact that it's not your family's anymore. But I wanted you to know it's in good hands." I asked why she cared what I thought. She smiled sadly. Because I know what it's like to lose a home you love. My family lost our farm when I was a teenager. Foreclosure. I never got to say goodbye. I've spent my whole life wishing I had. She paused. When I learned about you, about how much this house meant to you, I thought maybe I could give you something I never got. Closure. I felt tears welling up. How did you know about me? She said my parents had mentioned me during the sale process. That I'd wanted to buy the house but couldn't afford it. I did some research. Found out you're a designer, that you've been saving for years, that this house was your dream. She leaned forward. Elena, I'd like to offer you something. A partnership. I blinked. What kind of partnership? She smiled. Let me show you. Margaret drove me to the house. It looked the same from the outside, but inside everything was different. Construction materials were stacked in the living room. Blueprints covered the dining table. I'm renovating, she explained. Updating the plumbing, fixing the foundation, restoring the original woodwork. But I want to keep the character intact. The heart of the house. He turned to me. I need someone who understands this place. Someone who knows its history, its soul. I'd like to hire you as the design consultant. You'd help make decisions about the restoration. Colors, layouts, materials. You'd ensure the house stays true to itself. I was stunned. Why would you do this? She looked at me seriously. Because it's the right thing to do. And because I think you and I both want the same thing, to honor this house. I asked what she'd pay me. She named a number that was more than generous. You'd come up once a month for site visits. The rest you can do remotely. The project will take about a year. I didn't know what to say. Felt too good to be true. But I agreed. Over the next few months, I flew to Willow Creek once a month to work with Margaret. We'd walk through the house together, discussing plans. She listened to every idea I had. He cared about the details. The yellow wallpaper in the kitchen. The oak banister on the staircase. The window seat in my old bedroom. Tell me about this room, she'd say. And I would. I'd tell her about reading books on that window seat, about the way the afternoon light came through, about how it felt like the safest place in the world. She'd nod and take notes. We'll restore the window seat. Original wood. Same view. Working on the house was healing. It gave me a connection to it I thought I'd lost. I wasn't the owner, but I was part of its future. That mattered more than I expected. Margaret and I became close. She told me about her life, her career as a real estate developer, her late husband who'd loved old houses as much as she did. He would have loved this project, she said one afternoon. We were standing on the porch watching workers repair the roof. I told her I was glad she bought the house. She smiled. So am I. In October, I decided to tell my parents about the project. I hadn't spoken to them much since the sale. Our relationship was strained, distant. But I wanted them to know the house was being cared for. I called Mom one evening. I told her about Margaret, about the restoration, about my role. She was quiet for a long time. You're working on the house? She finally said. I confirmed I was. She sounded upset. Elena, that's just going to make it harder for you to let go. I told her I didn't want to let go. That this was helping me heal. She sighed. I don't understand you. We sold the house so we could move forward. You should do the same. I felt frustration rising. You sold it, Mom. Not me. I didn't get a choice. She said, you're holding on to the past. It's not healthy. We argued for a few more minutes before I hung up. I felt angry and hurt. She still didn't understand. And maybe she never would. In December, the renovation was nearly complete. Margaret invited me to Willow Creek for the final walkthrough. I drove up on a Saturday morning. The house looked incredible. The white paint was fresh and bright. The porch had been rebuilt. The oak tree had been carefully preserved. Inside, everything was both new and familiar. The kitchen had modern appliances but kept the yellow wallpaper and original cabinets. The living room had new floors but the same layout. My old bedroom looked almost exactly as I remembered it, just cleaner, brighter. Margaret watched me walk through, smiling. What do you think? I couldn't speak. I just hugged her. She hugged me back. It's yours too, you know, she said quietly. Maybe not legally. But in every way that matters, this house is part of you. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a key. I want you to have this. You're always welcome here. Anytime. For as long as I own it. I held the key and cried. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. That Christmas I spent the holiday in Willow Creek. Margaret invited me to stay at the house. She'd furnished it beautifully with a mix of antiques and comfortable modern pieces. It felt like home. On Christmas Eve we cooked dinner together in the kitchen. We decorated a tree in the living room. We sat on the porch and watched snow fall. It was perfect. Margaret told me she was thinking about what to do with the house long term. I'm getting older. I won't live forever. I want to make sure it goes to someone who'll love it the way we do. She looked at me meaningfully. I didn't know what to say. That night, lying in my old bedroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The house wasn't mine. But I was part of its story again. And that was enough. For now at least. The next morning Margaret made breakfast. Over coffee she said, "I have a proposition for you." I asked what it was. She smiled. "How would you feel about moving back to Willow Creek?" Margaret explained her idea. She wanted to turn part of the house into a design studio. She'd renovate the old barn on the property into a workspace where I could run my graphic design business. "You'd live here, work here, and help me maintain the place. I'd charge you minimal rent. Just enough to cover utilities." I was speechless. "Why would you do this?" She looked at me seriously. "Because you belong here, Elena. This house needs you. And I think you need it." I told her I'd have to think about it. It was a huge decision. Leaving Denver, my job, my life there. But as I drove back to the airport I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if this was my chance? Not to own the house but to live in it again. To be home. Over the next few weeks I thought about little else. I talked to my boss who said I could work remotely if I wanted. I talked to my friends who were supportive. I even talked to Marcus who said, "If it makes you happy, do it." By mid-January I'd made my decision. I called Margaret. "I'm moving back." I moved to Willow Creek in February. Margaret had finished renovating the barn into a beautiful studio space. High ceilings, lots of light, a loft area for meetings. It was perfect. Living in the house again felt surreal. I'd wake up in my old bedroom and have to remind myself it was real. That I was really home. Margaret and I fell into an easy routine. We'd have coffee together in the mornings. She'd work in her office, I'd work in the studio. We'd have dinner together a few nights a week. She became like a grandmother to me. Kind, wise, supportive. One evening in March she said, "I need to tell you something." Her voice was serious. I asked what was wrong. She took a breath. "I've been diagnosed with cancer. Pancreatic. Stage 3. My heart sank. "Margaret, no." She nodded. "I'm starting treatment next week. The prognosis isn't great but I'm going to fight." I felt tears forming. "What can I do?" She smiled. "You're already doing it. You're here. That's all I need." Over the next few months I helped Margaret through treatment. I drove her to appointments, sat with her during chemo, cooked her meals when she was too sick to do it herself. It was hard watching her suffer. But she never complained. She stayed positive, focused on the good days. "This house is giving me something to fight for," she told me one afternoon. We were sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets. "I'm not ready to leave it yet." I told her she wasn't going anywhere. That she was strong. He squeezed my hand. "Promise me something, Elena." I asked what. "If something happens to me, promise you'll take care of this place. Keep it alive." I promised. In June Margaret's health took a turn. The treatment wasn't working. The cancer was spreading. Her doctor said she had maybe 6 months. She took the news calmly. "Then I'll make the most of them," she said. She stopped treatment and focused on living. We spent her good days gardening, cooking, sitting on the porch talking. She told me stories about her life. I told her about mine. We became family. In August, Margaret called her lawyer. He asked me to be there. Thomas Brennan came to the house with papers. Margaret looked at me. "Elena, I've decided to leave the house to you." I stared at her. "What?" She smiled. "You're the only person who loves it the way I do. It should be yours." I told her I couldn't accept that. That it was too much. She shook her head. "It's already decided. The paperwork is drawn up. When I'm gone, the house is yours. No strings attached." I was crying. "Margaret, I don't know what to say." She took my hand. "Say you'll take care of it. That's all I need." I promised I would. Thomas had me sign papers acknowledging the bequest. Margaret signed her will. It was official. The house would be mine. I felt overwhelmed with gratitude and grief. She was giving me everything I'd ever wanted. But I was losing her in the process. Margaret passed away in late October. Peacefully in her sleep in the house she loved. I was with her, holding her hand. I organized the funeral. Small, intimate, just the way she wanted. Her family came, friends from town, people whose lives she'd touched. Everyone had stories about her kindness, her generosity. After the funeral, Thomas pulled me aside. Margaret's will is clear. The house is yours. We'll handle all the legal paperwork. I asked if her family would contest it. He shook his head. She talked to them. They understood. They know how much you meant to her. Over the next few weeks, the paperwork was processed. By mid-November, the house was officially mine. I stood in the living room looking around and felt Margaret's presence everywhere. She'd given me the greatest gift imaginable. Not just a house, but a home, a future, second chance. I called my parents to tell them. Mom answered. I explained what had happened. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "You own the house now?" I confirmed I did. She didn't say congratulations. She just said, "I see," and changed the subject. A few days later, Marcus called. Mom told me about the house. "That's amazing, Elena. I'm happy for you." Thanked him. He hesitated. "Mom and Dad are upset though. They feel like you went behind their backs." I couldn't believe it. How did I go behind their backs? They sold it. I had nothing to do with that. He sighed. "I know. But they feel like you manipulated the situation somehow. Like you planned this." I felt anger rising. I didn't even know Margaret when they sold the house. She reached out to me. "I didn't ask for any of this." Marcus said, "I believe you. But you know how they are." I told him I didn't care how they felt. They'd made their decision without me. This was mine. We hung up shortly after. I didn't hear from my parents for weeks. No congratulations. No acknowledgement. Just silence. It hurt. But I was also relieved. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had the house. I had my home. That was enough. By December, I'd fully settled into my new life. I ran my design business from the barn studio. I took care of the house, maintaining it the way Margaret had taught me. I planted flowers in the spring garden beds. I fixed the fence around the property. I made it mine while honoring her memory. One afternoon, I was working in the studio when I heard a car pull up. I looked out and saw my parents. They got out slowly, looking around. I walked out to meet them. "What are you doing here?" Mom looked uncomfortable. "We wanted to see the house. See what you've done with it." I invited them in. They walked through slowly, taking everything in. The renovations, the furniture, the way I'd preserved Margaret's touch while adding my own. Dad stopped in the living room. "It looks good, Elena. Really good." Mom nodded but didn't say much. We sat on the porch. It was awkward at first. Then Mom said, "I'm sorry." I looked at her. "For what?" She took a breath. "For not understanding how much this place meant to you. For selling it without talking to you first. For not supporting you." Dad added, "We thought we were doing the right thing. Making a practical decision. We didn't realize we were hurting you." I told them I appreciated the apology. That it meant a lot. Mom asked, "Can you forgive us?" I thought about it. "I'm working on it. It's going to take time." She nodded. "That's fair." We talked for another hour. About Margaret, about the house, about the future. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start. When they left, Mom hugged me. "I'm proud of you, Elena. For fighting for what you love." It was the first time she'd said that. Dad hugged me too. "Take care of this place. It deserves it." I promised I would. Watching them drive away, I felt something shift. The anger I'd been carrying started to ease. They'd made mistakes. So had I. But we were trying. That mattered. Over the next few months, our relationship slowly improved. They visited more often. We talked more honestly. It would never be perfect. But it was better. And better was enough. By spring, the house felt completely like mine. I'd added personal touches everywhere. Photos on the walls, books on the shelves, plants on the porch. I hosted small gatherings. Friends from town, colleagues from work, even Marcus and his family came to visit. Everyone loved the house. They said it felt warm, alive, full of love. That's exactly what I wanted. One evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. I thought about everything that had happened. Losing the house. Meeting Margaret. Getting it back. All the pain and joy and growth. I realized something important. This wasn't just about the house. It was about learning to fight for what I loved. About finding people who saw me and valued me. About building a life that reflected who I truly was. Margaret had given me more than a house. She'd given me the courage to claim my own story. I pulled out my phone and looked at a photo of her. "Thank you," I whispered. The wind rustled the oak tree and I felt her presence. Smiling. Proud. At peace. Today I'm sitting at my desk in the barn studio. The house is quiet, peaceful. I've lived here for over a year now and it still feels like a dream sometimes. My design business is thriving. I've taken on bigger clients, expanded my services. I'm even thinking about hiring an assistant. The house is exactly what I always wanted it to be. A home. Not a museum, not a monument. A living, breathing space full of memories and new beginnings. My parents visit every few months. We're not perfect, but we're honest. Marcus brings his kids and they play in the yard where I played as a child. It feels full circle. People in town know the story. About my family selling the house. About Margaret buying it. About her leaving it to me. Some think it's fate. Others think it's luck. I think it's a little of both. And a lot of love. Margaret taught me that home isn't just a place. It's the people who care for it. The memories you build there. The love you pour into it. This house is my home because I chose it. Because I fought for it. Because I refused to let go even when everyone told me to move on. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Margaret hadn't bought the house. If some investor had gutted it or torn it down or turned it into something unrecognizable. I don't like to think about that. Instead I focus on what is. On the miracle of second chances. On the kindness of a stranger who became family. On the house that survived and thrived. Last month I started a project. I'm writing down the history of this house. Every story I know. From my grandfather planting the oak tree to Margaret's restoration to my return home. I'm documenting it so future generations will know what this place means. What it survived. Who loved it. I want this house to have a voice. To tell its own story. And I want to be part of that story. Not as the owner. But as a caretaker. A guardian. Someone who understood its worth and refused to let it be forgotten. That's my legacy. Not money or status. But love. Love for a place. For a history. For a home. A few weeks ago I got a letter in the mail. It was from Margaret's daughter, Claire. I'd met her briefly at the funeral. The letter was short but meaningful. "Elena, I wanted you to know that Mom talked about you constantly in her final months. She said you saved that house. But more than that, you gave her purpose in her last year. Thank you for loving her and the house the way you did. I'm glad it's in your hands." I cried reading it. I wrote back thanking her. Telling her how much Margaret meant to me. How she changed my life. We've stayed in touch. She visited last month and we walked through the house together. She told me stories about visiting as a child. About her father working on projects there. About family dinners on the porch. "It feels the same," she said, smiling. "Mom would be so happy." I told her I hoped so. That I was trying to honor her memory every day. He hugged me. "You already are." Looking back, I realize my family selling the house was the best thing that could have happened. Not because I'm glad they did it. But because it set everything else in motion. If they hadn't sold it, I never would have met Margaret. I never would have learned about restoration, about preservation, about fighting for what matters. I never would have grown in the ways I did. Sometimes loss is the path to something better. Not because the loss doesn't hurt. But because it forces you to evolve. To become someone stronger, braver, more sure of yourself. I lost my childhood home. But I gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I could fight for it. That I could make a way when there seemed to be no way. That I was worthy of the home I loved. My parents taught me a lot growing up. But Margaret taught me something more important. That family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who see your heart and choose to protect it. These days I wake up every morning grateful. Grateful for the sunrise through my bedroom window. For the creaky floorboards I know by heart. For the oak tree standing guard outside. For the porch where I drink my coffee and plan my day. This house isn't perfect. It's old, it needs constant care, it has quirks and problems. But it's mine. And I'm its. We belong to each other in a way that transcends ownership. I'm not just the person who lives here. I'm the person who refused to let it die. Who fought for its survival. Who honored its past while building its future. That's a responsibility I don't take lightly. Every decision I make about this house is careful, intentional. Every repair, every update, every change is done with respect for what came before. I'm not just preserving a building. I'm preserving a legacy. Margaret's, my grandparents', my parents, even though they didn't see it that way. And mine. This house is our collective story. And I'm the one writing the next chapter. Last week I stood in the front yard and looked at the house. Really looked at it. The white paint gleaming in the afternoon sun. The porch swaying gently. The oak tree providing shade. The windows reflecting the sky. It looked the same as it did in my childhood. But it felt different. Better maybe. More alive. Because it had been saved. Because someone cared enough to preserve it. Because I came home. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who played in this yard, climbed that tree, dreamed on that porch. She never could have imagined this story. The loss. Fame. The miracle of getting it back. But she would be proud. Proud that the house survived. Proud that I fought for it. Proud that love won. My family sold my childhood home without telling me. They didn't know who the buyer was. They didn't know that stranger would become family. That she'd restore the house and then give it to me. That their decision would lead to my greatest blessing. Life works in mysterious ways. Sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. Sometimes loss is just transformation. Sometimes home isn't where you started. It's where you choose to return. And this house, this beautiful, imperfect, beloved house, is my home. Forever. Today I'm hosting a small gathering. Friends from town, a few family members, colleagues from work. We're celebrating the house's completion. 1 full year since I became the official owner. People arrive throughout the afternoon. They bring food, wine, stories. We eat on the porch, the same porch where my grandmother told her stories, where Margaret and I shared coffee, where I found peace countless times. Marcus arrives with his family. His kids run through the yard, laughing, playing. Sounds like my childhood. Dad shows them the treehouse he built decades ago. Mom helps me in the kitchen just like when I was young. It's bittersweet but beautiful. As the sun sets, I stand on the porch steps and raise a glass. Everyone gathers around. Thank you all for being here, I start. This house has been through a lot. It's been loved, lost, and found again. It survived because people cared about it. My grandparents, my parents, Margaret, and now me. And all of you, by being here, by celebrating it, you're part of its story too. People smile, nod, raise their glasses. To Margaret, I continue, who taught me that home is where your heart chooses to stay. And to this house, which has held so many hearts, so many memories, so many moments of love. May it stand for generations to come. We toast. Everyone drinks. The moment is perfect. As people talk and laugh around me, I feel Margaret's presence. I feel my grandparents watching. I feel the weight of history and the lightness of hope. This house isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who's ever loved it. And I'm honored to be its guardian. As the last guests leave and I lock the door behind me, I walk through the quiet rooms, running my hand along the walls, feeling the heartbeat of this place. I'm home. Really, truly home. And I'm never leaving again.